Hi everyone! Welcome back to my channel. I'm really glad that you're here today. If you don't know me, my name is Nila, and today I have a really exciting video for you. I am a huge reader. I try to read like a book a week or so. That's kind of my goal. You know, on Goodreads at the beginning of the year they asked you how many books you want to do. Usually I try to say 52. So now that 2017 is over, I ended up reading 48 books, I believe. That's how many I tracked. So I don't think I forgot any, but I might have. There's definitely room for error there. But anyway, so I was a couple books short, but I thought that I would share with you my favorite books of the last year. So, like I said, I'm a big reader. I read a lot. I read mostly fiction, so I'm not super into nonfiction, even though some books are, wonderful, and, I'm not knocking nonfiction. It's just I tend to go towards fiction more. And in spirit of the video, I'm wearing my When in Doubt, Go to the Library shirt that I just got for Christmas. My dad got it for me, so my whole family knows I love to read. So if you're having trouble finding a book that you want to read, I have that trouble all the time. It's like I go on Goodreads. Oh, there's my kitten. I go on Goodreads and it seems like I find tons of books I want to read, but then when I actually finish a book and it's time for me to find a new one, I can never find one that I want. So I hope that this video inspires you to read and hopefully gives you some good titles to check out. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So most of the books that I read, I actually read from the library, so I don't actually own them or have a physical copy here because I've long since read them and returned them to the library. But I do have this one book, so I'm going to start off with the one book I actually have a physical copy of, and that is Scythe by Neal Schusterman. I just got this for Christmas, so I'm really excited because this book came out last year and I read it pretty soon after it came out. I immediately fell in love with it. It follows two kids, Citra and Rowell, and they live in the future. It's kind of a near future type of semi-dystopian book, but it follows these two kids, and in their world, death has basically been conquered. So no one dies of disease or really by accident anymore, but there are this group of people called Scythes, and they have the power to kill people, to keep population under control. They do have to kill a certain number of people every year in different regions and of different, races and ethnicities and all kinds of stuff, so that they can keep the population under control and have enough resources. So Citra and Rowell are both apprenticed to a Scythe. So this is a job that they never expected to have, but they are chosen by a Scythe to come and learn the trade from him. So it is a fascinating book. It's kind of like a sci-fi dystopian mix, which I absolutely love. So this really hooked me in. The sequel's actually coming out in about, 8 days or so. That's my dog scratching her collar. But the sequel is coming out in a couple days. I'm so excited. This was definitely one of my favorite books of 2017. Okay, so the next book I have to talk about is Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. I don't actually have a physical copy, but I'll insert a picture. See what the cover looks like. This is a historical work of fiction, and it is set in World War II. I love this because it was actually set in an area that I don't think is talked about very much. It's a relatively unknown kind of portion of World War II, set in East Prussia, and it follows the lives of several refugees at the close of World War II, and they are trying to get to freedom and safety. I don't want to give anything away, but her writing is impeccable. It just draws you in, and I cried during this novel, not because it was necessarily so sad, but because you connect with the characters so deeply. It's really incredible. So if you're looking for a historical fiction novel to read, I would highly suggest Salt to the Sea. So the next book, I again don't have a physical copy, I will insert another photo here, is Alex and Eliza by Melissa de la Cruz. Now, I have not seen Hamilton. I'm not really on the Hamilton bandwagon just because I haven't seen it, but I do, as you can see, love historical fiction, and this is a book that really caught my attention. I've always loved movies like Pride and Prejudice and Becoming Jane, those type of movies, but I find that sometimes reading historical fiction is difficult because the language, there's a little bit of a gap there, but this book brought me right in. I knew from the first page that I was going to love it because it was kind of a, a more romantic era tone without being antiquated or hard to follow. So this follows Alexander Hamilton and his wife, Eliza, and it's basically their love story. It's based on truth, but you know, I think that it is a work of fiction, and the sequel's actually coming out this April, and I am really excited to read it. I loved the characters. It was so interesting to be able to insert yourself into this historical character's life, you know, because it always amazes me how someone may have lived hundreds of years ago, but they still struggle with some of the same problems that I do today. So Alex and Eliza, Melissa de la Cruz, highly recommend. The next book is actually a series. It is the Remnant Chronicles by Mary E. Pearson. I will insert some pictures here, and I'll put some links in the description bar below. This basically follows a girl who is meant to marry a prince of another nation. They are meant to marry and unite so that they can draw political strength between their two kingdoms. However, the night before the wedding, she runs away because she decides she does not want to do this. And basically, there are two people that are on the hunt for her. One is the person that she was going to marry, the prince, and the other is an assassin. Mary E. Pearson does this absolutely beautifully, but she kind of takes away the identities of the two people, the assassin and the prince, so you don't know, you're reading from their perspective, but you don't know which one is which. The whole book is kind of a mystery, and you're trying to guess which one is who, and it is really well done. This is one of the few books, it's a 3-book series, and the books are actually not that short. They're kind of lengthy. I think the 3rd book is one of the longest books I read this year, and it honestly never got old. I was page turning quickly the entire time I was reading the whole series. I read it in a couple, I don't know, maybe a week or so. But if you are into fantasy or mystery, or just, you know, you want to read about a really great character, all the characters were so complex but not confusing. So this series was really great, I think, for a lot of people. A lot of people would really enjoy this series. So Remnant Chronicles, Mary E. Pearson, great. The next book is Fire and Flood by Victoria Scott. I found this on an article talking about books to read if you like Pokemon. I was actually looking for a book for my little brother. He likes Pokemon and action and adventure, and I was looking for books that he might like. But this book caught my attention, and it really fascinated me. Basically, it's about this girl who is entered into this action kind of race, kind of like the Amazing Race, but the prize is a cure for whatever illness you need. Whatever illness there is, the prize will cure it. So this girl, her brother has an illness that is incurable. They're really struggling, and she enters this race, and they get these creatures, and it's really cool. I really don't want to give anything away, but if you are a fan of cool creatures, and it's not creatures that you know that you've known or seen before. It's not like, you know, unicorns or fairies. It's like this own kind of brand of Pokemon-esque creatures, but I don't want to compare it directly to Pokemon because it's not exactly like that. But I'm not even a huge fan of action necessarily, but I loved how she wrote these characters and their creatures, and the pacing was wonderful, I thought. So if you are looking for an action or adventure book, and you also maybe love Pokemon or fantasy, then I would really recommend Fire and Flood by Victoria Scott. The next book I have to talk about, one of my favorites of the year, is by one of my favorite authors ever. You may know her from Fangirl or Eleanor and Park. Those were some of her big novels, but she actually went into the realm of adult contemporary fiction and wrote Attachments by Rainbow Rowell. I'm sorry if I just said that, but Attachments, Rainbow Rowell. I will insert a picture here. I actually struggle sometimes. I'm out of college now, and sometimes I find that a lot of young adult books are really not relevant to me anymore, even though I may love to read them. Like, I don't necessarily have struggles with my parents all the time or things like that. So, but at the same time, I'm still young enough that I'm not dealing with like some of the problems that a lot of contemporary fiction writers go with. I also don't love to read a lot about like sex scenes or, you know, really graphic things. I don't care for foul language. So sometimes it's hard for me to find adult fiction that I'm interested in that is not that is clean, basically, and that still captures my attention. But Attachments did all of that. Her writing is superb. No matter what book you read of hers, I can't speak highly of it enough. Basically, this follows a guy, and he is hired as an IT person in an office at kind of the start of the internet. I think it's the late 90s, and he is basically sent and tasked with reading other people's emails at this corporation to make sure that they aren't sending anything bad. He starts reading these two women. They exchange emails. He starts reading their emails, and he kind of starts to have feelings for one of the women. So it's kind of this whole study on what the culture was like at the age of the boom of the internet, and also it kind of goes into issues of morality and technology and, you know, relationships and what to do when you aren't so sure that, you know, someone likes you or, you know, follows relationships. It's a really cool not study, but kind of a discussion on relationships. The main character is a really cool guy. He's so relatable in so many ways, I think, to a lot of people, and he works at an office job that he doesn't necessarily care for, which I can relate to. I've worked in an office before, and it was not my favorite experience. So I would really recommend this if you're looking for a work of contemporary fiction that will get you hooked and keep you hooked all the way through. Alright, so the last book that I am going to talk about is a little bit different than what I usually do. It is from a Scandinavian author, I believe, Fredrick Backman, and the book is called A Man Called Ova. And I'll insert a picture here. But this book basically follows an older man, Ova, who just got fired from his job of like 40 years or something. And he is in a depressed state, and he is such a hilarious character without even meaning to be. He's so ritualistic, and he's very particular, and the book had me laughing in this kind of strange off-brand of humor from the very beginning. It was like I kept laughing at these little things, and I wasn't even sure why, and just his character was so unique, and he struggles with the world and what he's going through because he likes things in such a particular way, and he feels that the world is moving too fast and that it's going away from basically all that's good. So he's a character that I didn't necessarily like relate to as a person, but he was so interesting to learn about and to follow his life. This was a little bit darker at points, so I would definitely say that it has a depression or even maybe suicide trigger, because he does suffer with some of those thoughts sometimes. But overall, it was just a really powerful read, and it gave me just kind of a different perspective. And I think sometimes it's good to read about people that are very different from yourself. It helps you learn about people's points of view. Even though, you know, it's a fictional character, it still had me really thinking about things on a deeper level and considering things in a different way than I usually do. So A Man Called Ova, it's a bestseller. I've seen it at Walmart, and, you know, you could probably order it online or find it at the library. And he has other books that I haven't read yet, but this one I would highly recommend. Alright everyone, that is all for my best books of the past year. Like I said, I've read a lot of books, and I've tried to narrow it down to these. I have many more that I loved reading during this year, but these are my top picks. Please let me know in the comments below what your favorite books were for the past year, or are in general. Like I said, I'm always looking for new books, so if you have some, please, please, please leave them in the comments below. I would love to talk about books with you and see what you all are reading now. So Happy New Year to those who are watching this around the time I'm publishing it, but thank you so much for watching. I will see you all in my next video. Bye!